Last week, Overwatch 2 was released on Steam, and at the time of making this video, it has over 110,000 negative reviews, which makes it the worst reviewed game in Steam's history. And honestly, some people are really surprised by this. They just don't understand why, and I guess it's a good question because, after all, Overwatch 2 removed loot boxes, which are a fundamentally predatory monetization tactic, and improved almost every single aspect of the core gameplay, including how fast the game is, finding matches is quicker, team makeup is better, and also removed all of the stuns and slows from the game that made it frustrating to play. Overwatch 2 also uses almost the exact same monetization tactics as every other free-to-play game on the market like Fortnite, Apex Legends, Valorant, and League of Legends. Well, first of all, 2/3 of these reviews have actually come from Chinese players who are upset about Blizzard ending their deal with NetEase. Now, if you don't know, NetEase essentially distributed Blizzard's products in China, and they ended their agreement with it, and now if you live in China, you just simply can't play Blizzard games. And I'd be really upset about that too, especially if I'd spent a whole bunch of money on them to buy the game, maybe bought cosmetics, spent thousands of hours in it, and then it was just taken away. Here's the thing though. If you remove those 2/3 of Chinese reviews, which I personally don't think you should because they do all cite things like no PvE, poor servers, and lack of content, which is pretty much what everybody is citing, you still end up with a negative review ratio of 80%. So what gives? Well, to understand why people are angry, we need to understand that Overwatch has a bit of a complicated history. When it was released in May of 2016 as a pay-to-play game, it received widespread acclaim from players and critics alike, selling over 9.7 million copies at launch and sitting at a comfortable 9 out of 10 average score across all platforms. Overwatch 1 had a host of lovable and varied characters, interesting gameplay mechanics, and beautifully done shorts that told the often heart-wrenching backstories of the game's characters, as well as some interactions in the game between those characters that made it feel like a really alive and breathing world. I absolutely loved Overwatch 1 and I played over 1,000 hours of it, mainly as a Reinhardt tank. It was a wonderful, beautiful game and I had some of the best fun with my friends that I've ever had playing this game. But the fact that the game had loot boxes in it always left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth. But since you received loot boxes as you played the game, in fact so many loot boxes that by the time Overwatch 2 came out I had 500 unopened boxes, it meant that you were able to get everything in the game post-launch without spending any additional money as long as you just played the game. It was a bit of a confusing system because on the one hand, loot boxes are a predatory monetization system. On the other hand, I had almost everything in the game for free with this system. Overall, for me and a lot of other people, the system worked, and while the gambling aspect was definitely predatory, and some people were sucked into spending a lot of money on purchasing those loot boxes, many players like me didn't spend a cent on unlocking post-release content. I understand that this is a personal experience, and I agree that as an objective, factual statement, loot box systems are a negative force in gaming because they are gambling and they aim to exploit people's addictions. That's not really a secret. I'm not saying anything crazy here. Everybody knows this and most people would love to see them banned from games, even though the success of games like Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail maybe suggest otherwise, but that's a whole other video. Anyway, loot boxes are gambling. Anecdotes do not change the truth of this statement. However, this is not a black and white system we're talking about. The original Overwatch loot box system was both predatory and gave players free unlockable items. It was both unethical because it promoted gambling and ethical because it offered players free ways to unlock post-game content. Anyway, let's get back to Overwatch 1. For a while there, everything was going great. The game was awesome, the community was awesome, there was even the esports league. And then, all of a sudden, the content stopped. For 2 long years, nothing was added to the game, yet despite this, its loyal player base stuck with the game, eating up the plates of shit, as Blizzard promised this drought was necessary that they had to put their whole team on development of Overwatch 2 to get it into the hands of players as soon as possible. Never mind that this is a multi-billion-dollar company that could pretty easily have hired 2 separate teams, but let's move on. And then Overwatch 2 came out, a free-to-play game with all new content, redesigned classes, heroes, new mechanics, new maps, and best of all, goodbye loot boxes, and hello Battle Pass, a much more ethical system. This all sounds great, but the problem here is that anybody who played Overwatch before Overwatch 2 came out got fucked up the ass. First of all, if you bought Overwatch 1, you no longer owned Overwatch 1. It doesn't exist anymore. Instead, you can play Overwatch 2. But since you paid to play Overwatch 1 and that no longer exists, that means that Overwatch 2, for all of its original players, is a pay-to-play game. Another reason that Overwatch 1 players players were so upset is that the previous system of having loot boxes enabled you to get lucky and just randomly open a legendary skin, and if that wasn't the case, you could use the coins that were obtained from those loot boxes to buy the skins that you wanted. As Overwatch 2 stands right now, there's no way to obtain skins without spending real money, and although all heroes are unlockable for free eventually, all of those heroes go through a 2-week period where they can only be obtained through the Battle Pass, which is quite obviously a FOMO tactic to get you to spend money on the Battle Pass. But this is something that almost every single free-to-play game does though, so why is everybody so mad at Blizzard? Well, remember, for those of us who played Overwatch 1 and paid to play Overwatch 1, this actually isn't a free-to-play game. And I have a feeling most players would have been cool with this if Overwatch 2 actually turned out to be a sequel, but the problem is, it's not. It's a DLC or an overhaul patch at best that's masquerading as a sequel when in reality, it was completely redesigned with a single purpose in mind, to extract more money from its player base with the added benefit that everyone who purchased the game, being Overwatch 1, no longer owns that product. So whenever those longtime fans hear that, oh, Overwatch 2 is a free-to-play game, that's why it's monetized like this, they get upset because for them, it was a box price game that now has a paid battle pass to unlock post-release content that they previously got for free. Hold up, box price and a battle pass? I definitely seen this before somewhere. Earlier in the video, I said that everything post-launch in Overwatch 1 was obtainable without spending money, and I know it was because I personally did it without spending a single cent other than the initial purchase of the game. So let's take a look at what this would look like in Overwatch 2. So when the game released, there was actually no way to get skins without purchasing a battle pass, but in February, Blizzard went back on this and they allowed players to start earning coins on the free battle pass track, which they could use to purchase pretty much anything in game, including legendary skins. This is actually a rare W for Blizzard. This is a good thing that they've done here, but I still postulated earlier in this video that you could only unlock skins with real money. And there's a damn good reason I said that, because to unlock everything in the game just using the free battle pass coins, it would take 327 years of playtime. Compare that to my 1,000 hours in Overwatch 1 where I unlocked everything. Okay, but we don't need everything, right? What if we just wanted to be a one trick and unlock skins for like one character? Well, you're also shit out of luck there too, because as reported by Kotaku, which is the most reliable source on the internet and not biased at all, it would take 7 months of daily play to unlock a single legendary skin if you're a free-to-play player. Which brings me to the most important question of the video. Does the removal of unethical loot boxes make Overwatch 2 a more ethical game, even though it was redesigned in order to gate skins behind insane time investments, knowing that it will drive players to swipe their credit cards instead? Is it more ethical to charge a flat fee of $19 for a single skin than to offer players a way to obtain them for free through randomized drops? As a simple thought experiment, the flat fee approach is undoubtedly more ethical since it's not exploiting a person's addictive tendencies. But remember the context here. Overwatch 1 had a system that enabled players to obtain everything post-launch for free, and you know what, I honestly think that the player base would be able to see that this is a positive step forward in terms of video game monetization ethics, and that Overwatch 2 is on the whole a better game and a big step in the right direction for the franchise if Blizzard hadn't strung them along for 2 years without content updates on the promise of a completely overhauled game that would redefine what a sequel can be. If they had delivered the fabled PvE content that players had been begging for 5 years. The very PvE content that caused a lot of people to invest money into the game in the first place, instead of cancelling it and delivering a $15 experience that barely rivals the previously free Halloween events. If they weren't trying to abandon their own game's esports league by asking teams not to compete in exchange for a tiny portion back of what it cost them to enter the league in the first place. And if they actually showed some respect for their players' time instead of gating content behind a 327-year grind. So for those wondering why so many other free-to-play games with virtually identical monetization systems aren't getting their nutsacks hammered down by a giant German man in a mechanical suit, it's because Blizzard overpromised, they underdelivered, and they took away free content and replaced it with an expensive store. I actually don't even understand how anyone can be surprised at the backlash from this at all unless you willfully ignore the history of the game's development. My personal opinion is that Overwatch 2 is a pretty dramatic improvement in many aspects of the game, except for the goofy new art direction, which I really hate, the stale 5v5 combat focus, and the lack of interesting modes. The problem is that these improvements to the game don't exist in a vacuum, and the fans who made Overwatch what it is today survived on a steady diet of shit-flavored sandwiches and giant mugs of copium from the Blizzard cafeteria for 2 full years before being served 25% of the promised content and requiring your mum's credit card to access the other half. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you are an Overwatch player, please let me know in the comments what you think of Overwatch 2, as well as the monetization situation in both Overwatch and other games. As always, a huge shout out to the people on screen right now who subscribe to me on Twitch and help me make content creation possible. These videos take a really long time to make, so I really appreciate all the support, and if you do want to check out the live stream, there's a link to that in the description, as well as links to my history and archaeology channels as well. Once again, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your guys' time, and if you do enjoy the content, please consider hitting the sub button. I'm getting closer to being able to monetize the channel, which means I can spend way more time on the content. So thank you all very much, and I'll catch you on the next one.